I'll be teaching you how to match these ASOKE strips to form a beautiful V neckline facing. Right here you can see all the ASOKE lines are matching all together, and it has a little tassel. The fabric used there is Mikado, but for me I'm using Ankara for this project, but the principle remains the same. So the main purpose of this tutorial is to match the lines of this ASOKE to form this beautiful V neckline. I'll be sharing with you the tips and tricks to forming this beautiful V neckline. You can use any fabric. Here I used Ankara and ASOKE. Using a roll of ASOKE, and I'll be cutting out 3.5 yards of my Ankara fabric. You can use any fabric of your choice, as you can see right here. So I'm opening up the fabric right now, and I'm cutting out 3.5 yards from the 6 yards. So I'm going to place the yardage part of this Ankara 3.5 into 2. So I'm going to place it the first fold. So if you are using 3.5, it will give you exactly 63 inches length. So here I'm taking the measurement to be sure I have my desired length. So here I have 65. I cut out up to 65 inches. So it all depends on your length. So next is to put it on another fold. So if I put it on another fold, now I have folded it into 4 times, and this is the center front and center back area, and the part that has the print is going to be the sleeve area. So the first thing we'll do is to create a border line. I'll go ahead and mark out 1 inch border line from the folded edge. Mark out 1 inch border line. So after marking out your 1 inch border line, the next we are going to do is to take the neckline. The neck width is 3.5 inches. The neck depth for the back is 1.5 inches. I'm going to connect 3.5 to 1.5 inches. The neck width I used 8 inches. So I'm going to connect with a straight ruler. I'll just go ahead and mark the neck width of 3.5 to 8 inches. Just go ahead and mark it in a V shape like that. Now I'm going to take my shoulder divide by 2. Mine is 8 inches. I'll mark it wherever you want your sleeve to be. Just go ahead and mark. So for me, I used 11 inches and I added 1 inch, making it 12 inches. So in total, I have 20 inches from the center front. So from that 20 inches line, I came down by 1.5 inch for my shoulder drop, and I connected my shoulder drop. Then I'll mark a straight line from that sleeve line. Then I'll leave it at that. I'm going to take from the shoulder right now, I'm going to take the position of my hip. The position of my hip is 29 inches. So I'm highlighting my hip length. So on the hip length, I'm going to take my hip divide by 4, and I added 5 inches to it. Altogether, I have 17 inches. So I'll now take my sleeve length. I like to use 11 inches, 11 or 12 inches for my sleeve opening. So on that sleeve opening, I marked a straight line. So I took what I have on the hip line, which is 17 inches, and I marked it right there on the sleeve line. So making a straight line from that point, I also went to the hem line, and I also took the measurements. Also I marked 17 inches on the hem line just to get a straight line. All the way from the hem line, you are going to mark a straight line to meet up the hip and to meet up the sleeve line. Then you have to, this is a kimono, make sure you make a curve at that point. Then I added 1/2 inch for my seam allowance on the neckline, on the sleeve shoulder seam line. So the next thing we are going to do is to start cutting out, but then I have a pocket attached to it. So I came down from my waistline 2 inches. Then my opening for my pocket is 7 inches. So the width of my sleeve is 7 inches. So now you are going to mark, just tilt your hand a little bit below, just create a pocket, okay? So I went ahead and created a pocket. This is how I like to shape in my pocket. So this pocket is cut together, so I didn't cut it off. So you just go ahead and connect it directly as you see me do right now. So after connecting the pocket, you can see what we got right here. Next is to cut this fabric. So I'm cutting it all the way from the hemline into the pocket. I'm going to take the shape of my pocket. I'll cut it back into the sleeve line. So at this point, I thought of adding 2 more inches to my sleeve because there is a pattern I want to sew the ASOKE with. So I'm not attaching the ASOKE on the sleeve directly. There is a pattern I want to use, which I will show you in this tutorial. So now I added 2 more inches to my sleeve, but this is optional if you really want to do that. So I continued cutting my pattern. I'm cutting through the 1/2 inch I added on the shoulder line. Then I'll cut it into the back neckline only. So once I got to that point, I separated the back and front because I'm drafting the back and front together. So I took off the inner part as my back. Then the front, I arranged it to cut out the neckline for the front. So I proceeded to arrange it to cut it out. So I went ahead and cut out the neckline for the front. So after cutting out the neckline, the next step is to create our facing. So I'll go ahead and pick up a piece of fabric, place it on fold, then place the center front to the center front of the facing, secure with your pins, and then trace out the neckline. So after placing that, I have to trace out the neckline. Of course, you know how to go about this part. Now we are going to shaping the facing, just shaping the facing to your taste. I'm placing the facing right side to right side of the main fabric for the front. I'll go ahead and secure with my pins. Then I'm going to stitch at 1/2 inch on the part I'm chalking right now. So after stitching the neckline, before I stitch the neckline for the front, I want to also cut out the facing for the back. So here I folded my fabric for the back too, and I made sure I placed the center back to match up the center back as well. So I placed it, and I'm going to also trim out the neckline. Trim out the neckline and the shoulder seam line, and the facing is ready. So I'll just go ahead and shaping my facing. I'm going to lay it right side to right side also, just like I did for the front. And I'll proceed to stitch at 1/2 inch. So after stitching, make sure you notch that area. Then flip all the seams to the facing and top stitch. So I'm done with that, and I'm done with the I'll also make a notch to the front facing. Flip up all my seams to the facing and top stitch. So right now, it's time for us to place this ASOKE, which is the main business of this tutorial. So you are going to identify the center front with your chalk, the way I'm doing right now. Now you bring the roll of ASOKE which you got. So this roll is about 72 inches in length. So I'll just place it from the shoulder. I want you to watch how I'm placing it. I made sure I place it to accommodate that shoulder completely. I'll bring it to the center front. So you can see how I'm pushing it upwards to be sure it matches the shoulder seam part and the center front. Then we'll now lay it on the center front. So I want you to watch the technique at which I'm going to do this. I'll just go ahead and fold in the way you see me fold. So just keep folding like that. So you keep twisting it till, of course, when you are twisting it, you will see the end point. So what I did is to first secure with my pins, okay? So as I twisted it, I secured with my pins to keep it in place. That is the first thing I did. But I also made sure that that part I folded is on the center front line. So that is why you need to mark that center front line as you see me do right there. So I will go ahead and secure with my pins accordingly. So I don't really want to cut out my ASOKE. So what I did was I brought it up to the other parts. I don't want to cut them in pieces, so I'll have some for the sleeve. So I also laid it the same pattern I laid the other part. You can see how I'm folding it. So this time around, as you are folding it, automatically you will see it matching up on the strips. So but you'll be the one to arrange the strips. You can see I'm taking my time right here to fold and make sure the strip matches exactly with the other one I've already laid. You can see that V-shaped part. So I'll continue folding it in as you see me do right here. So I'll keep folding like that, like that. So this is just when you are folding it, you will see them falling in place. Okay, if any of the strips wants to be a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, all you need to do is to continue to fold it in and make sure it matches before you pin. So that is the essence of pinning it. You have to pin it when you are very sure the strips has actually matched in a V shape the way you want it. So you can see what I did right there. So I really took my time. So at this point, the aim or the purpose of this dress is to make sure that the ASOKE strips matches exactly. So I kept pinning them and adjusting them until I got what I wanted. So as you are pinning it, automatically you will see at the center front, it will begin to diminish. I mean, you start having the pointy part of this ASOKE. So just try and do this. You understand what I'm explaining right here. So I kept pinning. I didn't actually want to rush this part because this part is the main purpose of this tutorial. So I have to make sure I pin and pin until I got. So at this point you can see the finish line. So once you keep folding, of course you just see the part that's where it will finish. If you are folding it, automatically you just see it end. Okay, so wherever it ends, that is where you stop pinning. So I'm still trying to adjust it to be sure that that is exactly where the other edge of the ASOKE will stop. So once I noticed it has stopped, the next thing I did is to trim it off. So make sure you pin it to the end before you trim it off. So I decided I'm just trying to press it down to be sure that where I want to cut out now is exactly the end point of that V strip. So what I did next is to start cutting out. After I was sure that that point is the ending part. So I lifted up the ASOKE just very much inwards and I begin to cut it out with my discretion because I really need this ASOKE, the other part of the ASOKE, for the sleeve. So I don't really want to cut it in a way that I will waste it. So I went ahead to lift it up on one side to cut out while I still press down the center front to be sure that that is exactly where I want it to stop. So I actually took my time on this part because that is the beauty of this outfit. So I went ahead to cut. So I just went ahead carefully. I cut it out neatly. Okay, so I will use that other part, just manage it for the sleeve part. So I begin to put it together again because I've cut out the excess. I begin to put it together again so I'll be able to pin this part accordingly before I proceed to sewing the sides. So here I'm done right now. So I kept pinning. So I just want to show what I did at the end of the day. So I made sure I pinned it very, very, very well. So the most important part of this is when you are pinning it, the strips, like I said before, you have to make sure they match. So as you are folding it in, it will keep matching for you like that. So that is it, and that is how I wanted it to look like. So the next thing I'm going to do now, once I've gotten what I wanted, I begin to iron it out. So here I'm pressing it down. So once I'm done pressing it down, then this ironing will give it a crease line. I'll take off my pins right now, and then once you take off your pins, you are going to see the crease line. So all you need to do is to put it together on the crease line, and then make sure you sew on the crease line. Don't miss the crease line. Identify the crease line, go over to the machine, you can secure with your pins, and then just sew exactly on the crease line for both of them, or else you are going to miss those points or those strips. So you can see how the back is actually looking. The back also, you can see the strips are well arranged at the back piece of it, I mean the seam lines. So I'll go ahead and stitch at 1/2 inch. After stitching, this is what I got. So if you turn it to the other wrong side, we are going to iron it once more just to make that part very, very flat. So after ironing it, next is to trim out the sides. So I'll just go ahead and trim out the sides. As you can see, I'll just trim it out, leaving 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'll just trim it at 1/2 inch, so it will be very light and not bulky on the dress. So after that, this is what you are going to have. Now I'll keep it and also shaping it. Of course, when you are working on this dress, you see how I cut off this part. You just see the excess and trim it off, leaving that V part like that. Now after that, I have to iron it down once more, so you can see the V shape is laying in place. Now it's time for us to place this beautiful ASOKE strip. We are going to place it on the fabric. So I brought my dress. So the dress, I have already placed my facing. So the next you will do is to arrange that V neckline appropriately on the neckline. So I'll arrange it on the neckline, and I'm going to secure with my pins accordingly. So I'm going to show you the technique at which you are going to sew this ASOKE. So make sure that center front mark line, that is where you placed it. So I will stitch on the neckline right now. So I'm going to the machine right now to stitch, but when you are stitching, please make sure you secure with your pin and don't stitch on the facing, because we are going to use the facing to turn the neckline. So I removed the facing from the neckline, as you can see, and I secured with my pin. So I'll go ahead and stitch very, very close to the neckline. So right here on the machine, I turned the wrong side. You can see the ASOKE at the right side. I followed exactly this facing seam line. So stitch on the facing seam line the way you see me stitch. So after stitching, this is what I got. I stitched only on the neckline. So this time around, I'm going to stitch on the edges of that V shape. So I begin to secure with my pins in a way I can also stitch on top of my pins. So make sure you dress it well. You can see me dressing this. Don't allow it to rumple or fold anywhere, or else it will not look smooth and fine. So I secure all of this with my pin, as you can see. So I'll go over to the machine now. After pinning it and making sure it's straightened and stable, I went ahead to stitch at top stitch. So I started top stitching from that V shape. What I'm doing right here is top stitching. So you go ahead and top stitch all the way from that point to the end, and I also did the same for the other part as well. So I went ahead top stitching all the way down until I got to the end. So after top stitching, this is what I got. You can see it's laying very neat and flat. So I'm going to cut out the excess. So I turned the dress to the wrong side and cut out the excess ASOKE. So I did that for the other side. So it's time for us to lay right side to right side of the back. So you just lay the right side to right side of the back and front. Now I'm going to wrap up the neckline using my facing. So I'm going to stitch at 1/2 inch. I'll wrap up the other side and I'll also stitch at 1/2 inch. So I'll go back to the machine and I'm done right here. So next we want to do is to stitch the sleeve line. So now I want to show you the method I want to use for this sleeve. So I open up my sleeve right side, then I brought my ASOKE. So I just cut my ASOKE into 2 because it was not enough. So I'm going to also cut it again. Okay, just divided the width, making it smaller. So that should be about 2 or 2.5 inch or 3 inches of that ASOKE. So I'll lay it wrong side to right side of the ASOKE. After stitching, I flipped it to the seams to the ASOKE and top stitched. After that, I brought everything to the front. So that is the method I wanted to use for this. So I will go ahead and top stitch on top of it. I'll do the same for the other side. So the next thing is to lay this dress right side to right side. We are going to stitch the sides of this dress. So I went ahead and put them in place. So I'm going to stitch from the sleeve 1/2 inch, 1 inch into the pocket. I also stitched 1/2 inch into the pocket like that until I got to the end. Don't forget to make notches. I always like to make notches on the pocket, on the sleeve, the curvy part of it, as you can see. So we have gradually come to the end of this tutorial, and I believe this class was helpful to you. So if you are new to this channel, please kindly subscribe, turn on your notification bell to receive videos like this every day. Like this video, share to family and friends, drop your comment on the comment section and your suggestions as well. Thank you for following Simbright Fashion Academy, and see you in the next one. Bye.